Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for this new latest edition of Race on Main Street. We appreciate you being with us. So sit back, we have some great information about a terrific population of Main Street Americans, that baby boomer generation. It's a significant portion of the United States fabric right now. So we have a great guest to talk about care and home care services that go into aiding those Americans, those middle-class Main Street Americans. David Shaw from Red Lion Home Care will be with us in just a short while, so we're very thankful to have him. He's got great information about how the aging population in America is being cared for, and if you yourself need some of that care or in need of it, some of the places you might be able to go to find the best sources for you at home. But before we get started, as always, I want to introduce my co-host and my business partner from Simon Capital Management, and my brother, most importantly, Stuart Race. Stuart, it's a great day here in Philadelphia where we're shooting at the Philly Cam Studios. How are things going?
Things are great. We are shooting at Philly Cam as we always do, so thanks to Philly Cam for providing us these wonderful studios. And this is the last show we're taping before Thanksgiving.
That's right.
So
that's
happy
right.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. I will see you at Thanksgiving.
That's true.
Yeah,
You'll be at my house.
That's right. So it'll be great. So I know
will.
you have plenty to talk about regarding the baby boomer generation, you being a part of that generation.
I am.
I know I'm the youngest part of the baby boomer generation.
Well, no, actually, you're according to the rules.
I'm not a part of the baby boomer generation.
No, you're 7-8 years too young to be a baby boomer. In fact, I'm according to the powers that be.
Right.
I was born a year before, so 65 is the last year, and I was born in 64, and the first year was 46. So to give perspective, our parents, Mom was born in 42.
Right.
So she was like the last of, I don't know what they call themselves, the greatest generation.
Right.
So anyway. Here's a statistic for you.
And lately I've been questioning your statistics
yes,
and your method of research.
And there's an intern somewhere who's shaking in her boots right now. 10,000 baby boomers have turned 65 every day since January 1st, 2011.
Wow.
And 10,000 more will turn 65 every day until January 1st, 2031.
Wow.
Okay.
That's such a huge number of people.
It's unimaginable.
I mean, that's got to be like 35% of the population.
It's close. It's actually 29% of the population. But still,
Okay.
I mean, 30% of us are
going to fall into this category.
Over the next 15 years from now and 5 years since are going to fall into this category. So that is a tremendous population, and characteristically, that is a population that needs help from the rest of us.
Yeah,
it's not. There are things that happen
right.
as you age that require you to be looked after.
Yeah, I sometimes think that it's an overlooked population.
In many ways.
I don't know if people. It's just hard to care for that aging population, physically, psychologically, emotionally.
I think it's a time issue. I mean, we always talk about the problems of the issues and the crosses to bear of Main Street America. I mean, it's very hard to earn a living, raise kids, and essentially, there's no better word for it, raise parents, because you're really providing most of the same kind of things that you're doing. Now, you're not teaching so much,
right? I
but
understand.
you're protecting them,
right?
And they deserve to be protected.
Yeah, it's interesting because you talk about raising kids, you talk about caring for aging parents. We're fortunate our parents are both not in a position where they thankfully need any type of like custodial or medical care.
Up to this point, not
right?
really.
That's right. But again, I mean, like everybody else, their time will likely come. And being the youngest of three boys, I have young kids, parents, and us in the, Joanna and I in the middle, and trying to take care of them, kids, work, and everything else. It's a tough spot to be in.
It is, and I want to, and to follow up when you said, we said, knock on wood with our parents, but there may come a day. 1 in 3. 1 in 3 Americans, 65 and above, statistics show, will need some kind of service-style care
Right.
during
that span.
during their waning years. You
Right.
know, some it doesn't take place until the final days. Some it takes place early on. But the point is that 1 out of 3, 1/3 of what is essentially 90 million Americans, so 30 million Americans are going to, and you know, again, we always come back to this. There are certain programs that help if you are someone who has not been so lucky financially. If you happen to have a couple of $1 million or more, you're probably going to be able to take care of yourself. But it's the people that live and work on Main Street where the issue becomes, you know, I got to get the kids off to school.
Right.
I got to get mom to daycare.
Right.
Mom doesn't want to go.
Right.
And the expense is ginormous.
Yeah, it's getting
So-
astronomical. It's a tough spot to be in for so many people, to be able to balance those items. You can't overlook your kids. You can't overlook your parents. I've talked with people in this area, because I'm fascinated by it, who have actually given up jobs because
Or lost jobs.
lost. That's right. Or have been asked to leave a job
Sure.
because there's been too much time that they've had to divert to home to care for aging parents. It's
Yeah.
a tough predicament because, just like you said, there's this huge population of people that's entering it. There's going to need to be just as large a population of people to care for it, whether it be children, whether it be outside care providers on some level, whether it's ones that are very technically advanced, like a medical
Yeah,
aid.
you
maybe
throw the
like a
medical
nurse.
thing into it, and then it gets really scary.
That's right. I mean, it all of a sudden is a different world. It's one thing to provide care for somebody who needs, you know, care around the house,
Right.
you know, custodial care,
Sure.
as they call it, as opposed to medical care. It's really a
Well-
huge differential between the two.
And you talk about, you know, is it harder with because we said with kids and they call them like the sandwich generation.
Yep.
With the kids and the parents. And, you know, in recent years or a couple years ago, there was a very sort of a catchphrase about how it takes a village to raise a child, all right? And sort of to encapsulate that, you think in terms of, well, play dates, okay? I can't make it home from work on Tuesdays, so I trade supervision with my neighbor who has a 4-year-old kid also. So on Tuesdays, he watches our 2 4-year-olds. I don't have a 4-year-old. And on Wednesdays, I watch them because he works on Wednesdays and I work on Tuesdays. Doesn't really work with an elderly parent.
It's
You know,
different.
you're not
It's
calling the
different.
neighbor and saying, well, you know, my I can't leave mom at home alone, and since you have mom, it doesn't seem to line up.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're right.
So-
I mean,
so it's
I've
a
never
little
thought
bit-
of it that way, but you're right. It doesn't seem like it's likely to be as good a
So you
fit.
say it actually is. It may actually be harder, you
Right.
know, on the people with the parents. So anyway, custodial care, which and I'm making a distinction here between medical care and custodial care, because medical, you know, if somebody needs to be given medicine or therapies or something like that, I'm just talking about elderly people that need to be cared for, but not in a medical sense.
Right. And the one distinction we have to make here is that while we're talking about the baby boomer generation, it's not just folks who have grown older that might necessarily need some kind of home care assistance.
sure, of
There's
course.
lots of pockets of people beyond an aging population
That is true.
that might need care at home because
That is
mom
true.
and dad might not be able to handle it all. So, but in terms of what we're talking about, this aging population.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the statistic I have here, which I know is correct because I checked it myself, is it has to do with the custodial care industry.
Okay.
So, and it does include, it doesn't limit it to
By age.
By age.
Right, okay.
The custodial care industry is a $450 billion industry. Okay. So
That's big.
it's huge. Okay. But the point is that let's talk about, you know, the issues of Main Street America. There's a lot of good job prospects in the custodial care industry for people who have a certain skill set.
You're right, and it's interesting that you mentioned that. You talk about Main Street America and good, honest, great-paying jobs that touch in this area. You look at so many statistics about this type of care, and what the next 10 years, 15, 20, 30 years look like, it is probably one of the largest growing segments of employment that's going to touch Main Street America.
There's a lot of good jobs out there.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
So let's find out about what's going on in that industry. Our guest today is David Shaw. David is the president and CEO of a company called Red Lion Home Care. David is a local guy. He grew up in this area and graduated from Penn State, so rough weekend for him, but go Lions otherwise. So I'd like to welcome to the show David Shaw. Welcome, David.
How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for being with us, Dave.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your history as it relates to the home care world and the home care agency world.
Sure.
And how you've gotten from day one to where you are now and sort of everything in between.
Yeah, sure. Right out of college, I was actually contacted by a company. They recruited me, got a hold of my resume, kind of the normal trail that a college student would take. During the interview process, I had a lot on the table. The one that I was most attracted to, obviously, was what landed me in home care. I won't forget it. I said during my first interview, I said, it doesn't matter how tough of a day you have it. I mean, everyone has a tough job. We all get up in the morning, we all go to bed at night. Some of us work an overnight shift if you're in home care, but at the end of the day, I can rest easy knowing that I'm helping people at the end of the day. It's a tough job like anything else out there, but rest assured, you're working 9 to 5, you're working 8 to 6, whatever the case may be, to extend somebody else's life, to make, to give them a better life at home, and so that they can maintain their dignity and respect and take care of themselves in a suitable environment and not have to be put in a nursing home or anything of that nature.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. I need care. What do I do?
That's a good question. A lot of people don't know what to do. You guys already alluded to how many people turn 65 every day, and those people need help. If somebody is Medicaid eligible and they are within the criteria for a financial Medicaid cap, their assets and their income are of a certain level and they have medical necessity, they have a chronic illness, whatever the case may be, they can apply through the state through a variety of different waivers, and they can get funded home care services for them so they can remain in their homes, as opposed to, like I said, having to go to a facility or long-term care facilities. There's a lot of great ones out there, but as you all know, obviously we want to be in the comfort of our own home if we're afforded the option to do so.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is it's funny because you've made mention, and this is one area that people can look at in terms of home care, is a Medicaid or a state-assisted program. Is that it's funny, I had a conversation not too long ago, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, where somebody had said, I feel like I'm spending so much money on taxes to cover programs like that. Now, my response to them was, it seems like if we didn't cover that, a lot of these folks would end up in an emergency room and a hospital because they don't know where to go. And I've heard people say that. Do you come across things like that?
I do, and that's exactly it. And it also ties into a big thing with the state is hospital readmissions. And the hospitals want to keep the readmissions down. So if somebody goes into the hospital, they might not receive the proper care, the proper treatment. They're going to go home with a medication regimen, whatever the case may be. If they don't have a home care aide in their house to help them follow that medication regimen, to help them follow the new exercises that they have to do, whatever it might be for that particular individual, they might very well end up back in the hospital because they didn't do what was prescribed for them to do when they got back home.
So it seems like a much more expensive process for
very
readmission.
Much so.
I mean,
the state would prefer everybody stays in their home and they're cared for in their home.
Right.
The hourly rate for the state to pay out for somebody to be in their home versus an hourly rate for somebody to be in a facility or a hospital is a great difference.
Right.
And when you look at the amount of people that we're talking about here, obviously, the numbers speak.
Yeah,
but
one other interesting part to that is, and it's a side that I'd never thought of really till just now, is that if somebody's taking up a hospital bed who doesn't really need the hospital, they need somebody to help them with some of these custodial care issues, that means there's one less bed in the community for somebody who really might need it for some emergent type of circumstance that's happened where they need a hospital, they need emergency care. So it seems like it's actually a much, much less expensive option than what the alternative would be.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just want to touch on, because when we were talking, my understanding is that there is a difference though, because you mentioned therapy and medication regimens
Sure.
to prevent for readmission, but there is a distinction between custodial and medical
Absolutely,
home
yeah.
care.
And at Red Lion Home Care, we provide non-medical home care services.
So what is that? So
If somebody needed a feeding tube, for example, and that required an RN to come into their home, we wouldn't provide that. We would help them get those services, sure, but what we do is non-medical home care services. So we're helping with the activities of daily living, the bathing, the dressing, the eating, the feeding, the meal preparation, the picking up prescriptions from the pharmacy, making sure they're taking their medication at the prescribed times and dosage, things of that nature. There's so much that goes into somebody's daily life and all these little activities that we go through, all of us, every single day. And once you hit a certain age or if you have a condition, when those independence are stripped away from you, it can make things very difficult. So sometimes somebody looks at the medical services and they kind of underestimate the non-medical services, which are really, you can't even get to the medical services if you don't have the non-medical services down, because those are just the instrumental activities of our daily living every day.
You know what somebody once said to me? They said, because it's an interesting point that you bring up, we take for granted, and it's easy to, how easy it is to just kind of get up in the morning and get dressed,
Sure.
get yourself together, out the door. You know, so I think of like my own mornings, you know, most mornings tend with me getting up, getting kids ready, off to school because Joanne's already at work, and then back and then to my office, things like that. Just that's what you do kind of stuff. And somebody once described it to me like this, and I thought it was interesting, and I've tried it, and it's not as easy as you think. They said, try tomorrow morning, put on a thick pair of wool socks over your hands, okay, and get dressed with them on your hands. And so I tried it, and it was the idea that how much more challenging it is by that one little extra element to really actually get yourself together in the morning. Imagine if you had some real obstacles.
I broke a thumb playing football. Couldn't get my sock on. I'm certainly not going to sit here and complain about that, but it's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you don't imagine it until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And to have a support system in place that can help you, and you don't have to worry and stress about it once you reach that position, is invaluable to me.
So one of the things I want to get to also, because we were chatting before we went on camera. So here's the scenario. A niece is taking care of her uncle, okay? And she's in a situation where her employer is saying, you got to choose. I'm under the impression that she doesn't have to just depend on her family obligation. She's entitled to be paid.
She is, and a popular trend in the industry in the last year alone has been just that. There's a lot of caregivers that are caring for family members of theirs. There's a lot of family members that are caring for family members that are not a paid caregiver. Like you guys alluded to earlier, there are people out there that lose their jobs because they have to take care of mom or dad in the morning or at night, or maybe in the afternoon they have to leave work to go home, right? There's so many things that can come up every day, and you know, it's not practical for someone to be doing that. So what is the other option? You're gonna have a stranger come in your home, right? Or hopefully you're with a good agency that they're gonna introduce you to a handful, and you're gonna select somebody like we do at Red Lion. But in many cases, you want a relative in your home that you already know. You don't have to go through trusting a new person, and it's tough enough to receive these types of cares at home. You want somebody providing the care that you already know and you're already comfortable with in many cases.
So just to be clear, that person that you're comfortable with, that's part of your family, they can qualify to be paid as an aide for you. There's no special training what goes into that?
If there's a mother and a daughter, and the mother is the care recipient and the daughter is the one providing the care, we can absolutely hire that daughter to provide care, and she can be the paid caregiver as an employee of Red Lion to provide care for her mother. And to be qualified for that, you would either be one of three titles: a certified nursing assistant, a direct care worker, or a home health aide. The certified nursing assistants and the home health aides receive certifications through the state. There are a certain amount of hours of training. CNA is kind of the top tier, and then you have your home health aide, and then a DCW is someone who maybe doesn't have that kind of experience, but they have the hands-on experience at home. Maybe it wasn't paid, okay? But they have the experience, and they go through a clinical orientation at an agency, whoever they're employed with. If they pass the clinical and they pass their orientation, they'll have to take a competency exam. They'll have to really make sure that they know what they're doing and that they're going to be providing a safe atmosphere and environment for the person they're caring for. They can absolutely be a paid caregiver.
It seems like that's actually one of the better alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the, you have a daughter in this example that we're using caring for a parent. There's a very good chance that she's going to care a whole lot more than anybody else you could bring into the mix here.
Of course.
Right. I mean, that's
and it also defeats the situation. You hear all these stories about how I work outside the house, but it gets eaten up by having to pay.
Right.
The caregiver. So it's sort of a conundrum, a rock and a hard place.
Right.
And this might be a way to make things a little bit less hard for people.
That's exactly right.
In that situation.
That's exactly right.
And it doesn't sound like they don't need to go to school for 10 years to get. I mean, obviously there's some kind of training and some kind of certification, as you said, but they don't have to recommit and get retrained, and it takes years and months and years and before it can happen.
Exactly. It's a process that can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
As long as you have the right policies in place and everyone on both sides is on the same page, it is something that can happen very quickly, and that's important because if, let's say, somebody is coming home from the hospital and they need care and they want their daughter to care for them, you want a seamless transition. You don't want time spent where somebody's not a paid caregiver and their attention not 100% there for that patient. So, to have a seamless transition from a nursing home to the home, from the hospital to the home, from the ER to home, it just makes it's that much more important for the consumer.
Yeah. So you mentioned about Medicaid as a state-aided program helping in this area. So you're a business person and you understand that there's a living to be made. What if the person is not Medicaid eligible? I'm assuming that there are folks that can pay for this on their own, or they can get help through if they have insurance, through their insurance carrier, medical insurance, things like that. How does that work?
Yeah, there are options. If somebody is not eligible, let's just say they're not financially eligible, okay, to receive through a Medicaid waiver, okay? There is something that is a shared cost program, and it's called an options program. Essentially, all that's happening is if an individual is slightly over the actual Medicaid financial cap, they can receive certain benefits from the state. It just will not pay for all of the services. So let's say somebody is just over the financial cap and they want 20 hours of care. They may be paying for 10, maybe the state pays for the other 10, something of that nature. It all depends on the level of care needed and the frequency and duration of the care. Outside of that, if that's not an option, private pay is also another option. There's plenty of folks out there who choose to pay privately out of their pocket, and make no mistake about it, there's a lot of people out there that do that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then is there ever a circumstance where medical insurance, whether, regardless, whether it's a young person, an older person, where there's going to be medical insurance that could kick in, or Medicare, or those types of programs?
There are third-party insurances, and I've had consumers in the past that did not meet the financial cap, and we provided care for them, and it wasn't a shared cost program with the state. Their private insurance, whoever they had at the time, they would pay for a portion of it. Instead of maybe Medicaid paying for it, their insurance party would pay for a portion of their care, just like the state would.
Yeah, and I guess the last real question I have about this as we start to wrap up is, are these some of the areas that you can help with, or are they items that, so if somebody came in to you and said, I think I'm eligible for Medicaid, I'm assuming at that point you can pick up the ball, make the necessary phone calls so that since you're the expert, not just on providing someone to offer them the care, but actually sort of get this all set up and rolling. So that they're good
and that's
to go.
the most difficult part for the consumer and a caregiver, because there's so much red tape to jump through, and there's so much paperwork, and there's so many phone calls that have to be made, and by the time you're done with the mail and filling out forms, you're kind of just throw your hands up in the air and quit. We're a full service agency at Redline, so what we're going to do is if we identify somebody in the community that needs help, or somebody identifies us and they say, hey Dave, how do I get care for my mom, or how do I get care for myself, right? I'm going to let them know exactly what they need to do. I'll sit down with them. I've coached people. I've sat down with them. I've picked up the phone with somebody before and called the state and told them who I was, told them who the consumer was, and we've done it together. I've gone to someone's home and filled an application out with them to make sure that they knew exactly what they're doing, because by the time they're done filling out their application, it goes to the state, it comes back, it's wrong, it could be several months before they even get the proper application sent out. So you have to take that extra step. You really do. There's really no way around it. To throw paper in someone's face and say, sign it and I'll follow up with you is just not practical. So sit down with somebody, you take the extra hour, whatever the case may be, and you make sure that you're leading them in the right path. There's always going to be a couple different directions they can head in, and that's somewhere where you're going to need somebody that's been through it before to kind of help you and guide you through the process.
Yeah, all right. Good stuff, and we'll certainly, with the aging baby boomers, we'll certainly be in a situation where it sounds like you can provide a lot of help for them, and hopefully that'll be something that takes place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if they want to get more information about it, they can always go to www.redlionehomecare.com for additional information. So,
excellent. Thanks for being with us,
yeah,
Dave.
Thanks
really
for being with us,
you.
Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Great information. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get out of here with a couple of fun facts, fun stuff on the way out, because this was kind of a heavy show.
A little bit.
So let's take it entirely in the other direction. Let's go back to childhood and talk about the top 5 best-selling toys of all time. So
I'm going to try to guess a few of
go
them.
ahead. The one is easy.
One's easy.
Yeah.
It's Barbie.
Barbie
There's
is
no question
by
about
far
it, right?
is the best.
Yeah. So Barbie. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of toys that have been around for a long time.
Yeah,
that are still on the
that
shelf.
would make sense.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So Slinky.
Slinky is one of them. Yes, it's number. Oh no, it's not. I'm sorry. No.
Really?
Not in the top 5.
Oh, I gotta see the intern. Silly Putty.
Silly Putty is number 5.
Okay. I'm not sure when
So
this
you have
came
to think.
about.
Don't think about you're a little boy. Don't think about being a little boy.
No, I understand. What about Play-Doh? Don't tell me if I'm right or wrong till I finish. Okay. All right. So I said Barbie, Slinky, Silly Putty, Play-Doh, and the 5th one. I don't know. Is there like a brand of roller skates?
Close. Very close. The Radio Flyer wagon, the little red wagon.
Oh, that's it. Yep.
Was number 4.
Yep.
Yo-Yo was number 2.
I didn't say that.
The Easy Bake Oven was number 3.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
And Silly
at
Putty
that.
was number 5. But here's the thing. The expected top-selling toy of this year is going to be something called Ruminate Power. And what this thing does is it's a device that allows you to power up your little robot toy, and then there's an app on your phone that the kid can, and the robot moves around based on what the kid is doing on the phone, and there's going to be an attachment at some point that you'll be able to stick that thing on the back of your Barbie and dance Barbie around using your cell phone.
So it's the technology that gets attached to like some kind of this robot or to Barbie or whatever.
It's radio waves.
That's the number one.
They're expecting that to be the number 1 toy this year. So put that up against the yo-yo and how far we've come in your life.
It's a big difference, one to the next. I
There
mean,
you go.
yo-yo is like a little ball on a string.
Okay, so yeah, that's what it is, the yo-yo and the little ball and the string. So next week we're going to have, as a guest, we're going to be having Ben Hall, who's from JKJ Services. So he's going to talk about retirement planning.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Enjoy yourself and be careful out there on Main Street. And remember, if you want some more help or some more information about home care services, you can go to www.redlionehomecare.com, and we'll see you on Main Street. Thanks, everybody.